what I want you guys to do is do this practice with me. Those of you in Spirit Gym know how to do this, but this is how we start all of our sanghas. This is what I do every morning and have been for quite some time as my spiritual practice amidst other practices. But this is the most important practice for me to bring my vibration up, let go of unnecessary baggage or stress, or anything that's going on that's triggering a complex in you, which is an emotionally charged cluster of emotions, feelings, memories that creates a neural network. And that cluster or complex begins to have an autonomic personality of its own. So it creates, if they get big enough, they create what are called multiple personality disorder. We all have complexes because we all have emotional things that are stressful or scary or painful that we don't know how to deal with. And so whenever that happens, thoughts, feelings, and emotions and judgments get pushed into our unconscious, because if we don't have the skills or the ability to deal with it, then it has no choice, because if that information was allowed by the ego to rise up, it would overwhelm us and it would disable us and decrease our chances of survivability. So one of the functions of the ego is to repress any material that could disable us. What you are surely aware of that happens to people when they take psychedelics like LSD, mushrooms, ayahuasca, etc., is that repression mechanism, the filtration mechanism of the ego, is disabled. So the technical name for that is the default mode network, which is different aspects of the brain that integrate and work together to create the filtration system, which is the ego. Now, why I bring that up is because, having conducted, about 1,000 healing ceremonies in my career, I've had a lot of exposure to just how much gets repressed in people and what happens when you uncork the demons from the bottle and they come roaring out. And it can be quite intense and quite scary, not only for the person that it's happening to, but for everybody witnessing it. So the point I'm bringing up here is that this is why I have to do a lot of healing work and preparation work to prepare people for a real shamanic ceremony. A real one meaning 5 grams of mushrooms, or what is called a shamanic dose. Less than that, depending on the medicine, you can kind of do it recreationally and not have to really confront your unconscious. But the heart breathing practice brings your vibration up, harmonizes your body, harmonizes your brain, your heart, and your gut, makes your energy field coherent, and allows you to have the extra life force energy that the body can begin to use to remove blockages. And by doing the practice, you're strengthening the heart chakra, which is the integration chakra that takes the upper 3, which is the domain of spirit, and the lower 3, which is the domain of instincts and body, and integrates them. So that's a basic explanation of why we do this. So when you speak of this heaviness and this tension in your heart, that's a very common symptom of unresolved wounds, often childhood wounds or relational wounds, such as people that had challenging, painful experiences with a spouse or a lover, or any number of things that wound the heart. And so if the heart center is wounded, then its capacity to regulate the flow of energy and information through all the chakras mirrors that imbalance, which is what Tarot 10 is really telling us, is that your perception of what's happening in the world will be a mirror of what's happening inside of you. So if you don't like what's happening outside of you, then you need to look inside yourself. Once your perception of what's happening inside of you heals, then your perception of what's happening around you becomes very, very different. In other words, you might reach the place where the people that once hurt you, you look back on it and realize that if they hadn't hurt you, you would have never had enough of a reason to begin to do healing work and initiate a spiritual practice and become whole. And so where those people were once potentially people you had a lot of judgment, resent, and even hate for, you now realize how important that was, because as painful as it was exactly the gift you needed to push you deeper into yourself. So the practice is very simple. Start by putting one hand over your heart and just pay attention to what you feel inside of yourself as far as feeling grounded, stable, and centered. Then try the opposite hand and see what the difference is. Now, for example, I'm right-handed. When I put my right hand over my heart, it causes my energy to expand and it makes my mind more energized. When I put my left hand, my non-dominant hand, my feminine hand over my heart, it has a yin effect. Now my energy is pulled into the center and it creates a stabilizing effect. So if I was really emotionally stressed, I wouldn't want to put my right hand on my heart because it would probably magnify the energy of it. If I put my left hand on, it'll have a calming and centering effect. Then we just put the second hand on top of the first hand, and that also has a stabilizing effect, because the polarity of your right hand is positive, the polarity of your left hand is negative. So when you do that, you put a positive and a negative together and they cancel each other out. So it creates a neutralization, and that's based on the polarities of the body. Then what we want to do is we want to make sure our tongue's on the roof of the mouth where it naturally goes when you swallow, because that connects what's called the microcosmic orbit. So the energy, life force energy, flows through it. The microcosmic orbit at the tip of your tongue, that's the beginning of the conception vessel. It runs through your neck, through your sternum, through the linea alba, which is the central line of the abdomen, through the pelvic floor, and it ends right behind a man's testicles or a woman's vagina. And the governing vessel begins at that point, and it rises through the rectum, up through the center of the coccyx, up the spine, around the midline of the head, and down, ending right at the back of the front teeth. So every time we're breathing, if your tongue's in that position, you're recirculating life force energy. So it actually has the effect of accumulating chi. If your tongue drops down, then you've broken the circuit. So now, no matter what you're doing, you're bleeding energy off, which would be like having a car with no alternator. Eventually, the battery will just go dead because there's nothing recharging it. So tongue on the roof of the mouth is what I call the alternator function. Now, I'm going to take you through a few steps. What I'd like you all to do is close your eyes and bring your consciousness to the heart right behind your hands. And now think of your heart chakra like a flower, and hold the intention that you're sending love to somebody that you really feel a deep loving connection with, and it's safe to hug and really let yourself be fully present in the hug. Or if you have a child that you would kiss and pour your love into. And so what I want you to do is open your heart chakra with that loving intention, and you should feel a vibration under your hands. And then you can practice just closing it, and then open that loving intention and just visualize that person you can pour your love into. See yourself giving them a hug and opening your heart to them. And that's how you control a chakra, by the way. So now what we're going to do is we're going to couple that with the inhalation, which is the yin cycle, because the lungs are hollow, and when you exhale, your lungs are empty. So that creates a desire, a yin effect. So when we draw our breath in through the nose, we want to let the belly expand for the first 2/3 of the breath, and only let the chest get involved in the last 1/3 of the breath, which is the normal mechanics of a proper breath. So we're going to practice just inhaling through the belly, and only in the last third of the breath, filling our lungs fully, but not so full that you activate the neck muscles or the accessory respiratory muscles and see tension in the neck. You just want to take the deepest, fullest belly breath you can without a struggle. And when you exhale, you can let it go out through the mouth or the nose, whatever is natural and easy for you. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a visualization to that. As we inhale, 2/3 belly, 1/3 chest, we're going to visualize that we are inhaling through our aura, like the sun changing its polarity. So instead of the light is shining out, it's shining towards its center. So it becomes yin, not yang. And so we visualize we are breathing God's unconditional love into our whole being and right into our heart. And we say the words, I breathe God's healing love or unconditional love or just God's love into my being. And we can visualize that light as green, gold, violet, or white. All of those have healing properties. So as we inhale, we feel the love of God, unconditional love, coming in, filling our heart. As we exhale, we hold the same intention as though we were going to pour our love into that child or that friend or our mother or whoever it is. And we open that heart chakra. And as we exhale, we hold the thought and the intention, I give God's love to all beings, in all places, in all times, in all dimensions. I give God's love to all beings, all places, in all times, in all dimensions. Why do you think it's important to give God's love to all beings in all places, in all times, in all dimensions? You realize that if God is God, there's nobody here but God. So this is why I often quote Isaiah 45:7. I, the Lord, create the light and the dark, good and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Those are the prerequisites of consciousness. You have to have a duality to have consciousness. And you can't have good unless you have something that upholds it. You wouldn't know what good was without evil. And if you didn't know what good and evil was, you would have no free will. In other words, you wouldn't be able to choose to love or not to love. You would have to love. If there was only good, you'd have no choice but to love, because loving is good. So the only way God can come to know itself is to give itself and its expressions of itself the choice to not love, which is what evil is, in gradient from minor. To be moral means to protect life. A moral code is a code of conduct that is life affirmative. So to be evil is to be immoral, to not protect life, to not nurture and support life. All parents are tasked with the functions of cleaning, feeding, nurturing, and protecting their offspring, whether they're animals or human. That's love, to clean, feed, nurture, and protect. So now ask yourself, does evil clean, feed, nurture, and protect? No, it makes a mess. It has no problem poisoning and starving. It does not nurture, and it does not protect. So there you can see the opposite polarity. But the key thing to remember is, in Spirit Gem, I teach that God symbolically is zero. So zero, representing unconditional love, has no mind. A mind is a duality. So zero cannot think itself into existence. You can't think without a duality. For example, you could not know north without south, east without west, male without female, up without down, in without out, ... Without that duality, there's no way to make meaning out of anything. You could not have the necessary contrast to make meaning. So as zero, God dreams itself into existence, which means it looks into itself in a state of dreaming. And because God, by definition, is that for which there is no other, then that means God is the ultimate aloneness. There's nothing behind or beside or near or next to God to have a relationship with, unless God dreams it up, or you don't have God. And if you did, you'd have a problem, because you'd have two gods, and you'd have to say, well, how did they get created? You see? So zero negative in Spirit Gem is the emptiness of God. That's the feminine. Females are more empty than males. They have a uterus. We have a penis. The uterus is empty. The penis is not empty. So the feminine function of God is zero negative, which is the no thing or the emptiness of God. Zero positive is the something of God, which is the manifestations of God's dream, which is everything in existence, or Spirit Gem. So because the only way there can be anything other than zero that you can perceive of as a phenomenon, like I can see you sitting in your house, I can see all of you, I can look out the window, I can see the wind is blowing. Those are the phenomena that are coming out of the plenum, is the metaphysical name, the plenum of God. So God's not only absolutely empty, God's absolutely full. Zero positive is the plenum. So imagine God like a massive, massive geyser shooting up out of emptiness, and the water has nowhere to go but back into itself. You know how you have big fountains with a base at the bottom full of water, and it shoots water up, and it just falls back into the base and recirculates. So God is creating phenomenon, which is the water shooting up, but that's the plenum, but it's coming from the vacuum, which is the infinite emptiness of God. So the reason I'm telling you this is because anything that exists, be it your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your enemies, your friends, the opposite team, other worlds, planets, stars, they're all expressions of the one plenum, which you are too. But all of it comes from the same source. Another way to think of this simply is, if you think of God as an ocean and each of us as a wave, and we become conscious when the ocean waves, I'm sitting here waving at and waves at me, and it looks like we're two separate people living in different places and very far away. But in reality, it's just two waves waving at each other going, hey, here I am, which would be like, drawing a face on one finger and a face on another finger, and then pretending that they were individuals, not realizing they're connected to the same heart and the same body. And because we exist at all dimensions that God exists, because the core of you is the witness behind your consciousness that's watching and listening to me now, there is a perceiver, and that is not yin, it's not yang, it's not male, it's not female, it's not the phenomenon, it is what I call big C, which is zero itself, witnessing everything, but not getting trapped in it. The part of us that gets trapped in it is the dream character that's still asleep to the fact that it's dreaming. enlightenment means, oh my God, it's me dreaming all this shit into existence all the time. I better learn to control my mind because, you can only blame everybody else for so long. And before that story, everybody gets tired of hearing it, right? Okay, so just to review, tongue on the roof of the mouth, inhale through the nose, expand the belly for the first 2/3 of the breath, chest in the last third. As you're inhaling, visualize green, gold, white, or violet light coming into your body, filling your heart. And on the exhale, you open your heart and you pour that unconditional love out to all beings in all places and all times and all dimensions. And it's easier to open your heart on the exhale. I won't go into the mechanics of that, but it is. Once you've practiced for a little bit, then once you feel that you can hold your heart chakra open. Now, if you're calm enough and centered enough, you should actually be able to feel each other no matter what distance you're at, because we're all bound by a non-local reality and we're all connected to each other right now. So what we want to do now is just practice a couple of minutes of heart breathing. So we'll inhale 2/3 through the belly, last third through the chest. Draw unconditional love into your being. Fill yourself up, I before we. Exhale, open your heart, pour it to all beings in all places, in all dimensions, in all times. And when you're ready, breathe in. Draw the unconditional love in. Breathe it out. Open your heart like a flower, like a sunflower opening fully to the sun. Now, can you clearly feel your vibrations gone up? So this is what I'm demonstrating to you, is that you can consciously raise your vibration. Remember the spiritual rule, like attracts like. So if you're in a negative state, you are attractive to and food for negative entities. If you are in a positive, loving state, then you are in resonance with positive, loving entities. Negative entities are negative because they have often been wounded when they should have been loved. So their orientation to love and intimacy and deep connection is that it's dangerous. So consciously or unconsciously, they reject love, which is why you get people that do evil things in the world. They reject love. They reject God. Because one of the key things is, if God was God and God was love, why would God let this happen to me? Which is just a misunderstanding on a deep level, which I won't go into right now. But when we bring ourselves up into this higher vibrational state, for example, if you do tarot draws, you will find that it's a lot easier to get an accurate draw than if you're in a negative, stressed, or chaotic state. Because when you're in a negative, stressed, or chaotic state, you're attracting entities from the astral dimension and any dimension that feeds off of that energy, and they love to toy with people. They love to, see if they can manipulate you and get you to do things that aren't accurate, like draw the wrong cards and believe the wrong thing. To them, that, because the more emotionally wound you get, the more food you generate for them, which is one of the reasons why negative states are so draining, because you're actually often feeding negative entities and they're drawing your life force out of you, where paradoxically and oppositely, being in a state of love is very fulfilling and nourishing. And monks, for example, who go many, many days without eating can do that because they are filling themselves with love, and the body becomes so efficient and so relaxed and so connected. It's essentially feeding off higher vibrational energies, which is the opposite of negative. Negative sucks. The positive self-fulfills. I'm sharing this with you and all of you because I feel it is important for you to practice this. And I would recommend starting your day every day and doing that for as many minutes as it takes for you to literally start to feel like you're getting lighter in your body and like things are expanding. But breathing through and opening your heart like that gives you the energy to process all these things that are trapped inside, and it begins to transform them. Think of the painful parts of ourselves like chunks of salt. Think of the love that you're breathing in like water. It dissolves the salt and washes it away. So the more we orient ourselves toward love, and the reason this is such an important practice for wounded people to do is because you're breathing unconditional love, and there's no connection to a human being that can have any leverage over you or want anything from you. And you're learning to make love in yourself, as yourself, with yourself, and for yourself, and to practice giving it away. The more love you make, the more love you have, and the more love you can give.